How do you increase the value of your art? Now, if you've watched any of my other videos on selling your art, you know that my personal philosophy is that the best way to sell your art is to have your art priced just below the perceived value. And the public gets to set the perceived value on your work. So if you're not selling your work, you really only have two options. You can lower your prices until it actually gets below the perceived value. Now, that's going to move your work in the short term, but that's really not an effective strategy. The most effective strategy is to actually work towards increasing the value of your work. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tim Packer. I'm a fairly successful artist. Over the last 20 years, I've earned over $2.5 million on the sale of my work. And I actually came to my art career quite late, in my mid 30s, after already making a decision that I wasn't good enough to make a living as an artist. So for those of you who are kind of in that situation, where you dream about being an artist and actually earning a decent living from your art, but you think that right now you're just not good enough, don't worry about it. I wasn't good enough when I was 20 years old either. I didn't realize at the time that talent is not something that you are given. It is not some divine gift that's bestowed upon you. Talent is just the combination of your skills, knowledge, experience, creativity that you've accumulated over the course of your life. So talent is not something you are given. Talent is something you develop. And that is one of the keys that we're going to talk about today, and how to increase the value of your art. But before we do that, if you like my content and you'd like me to continue putting out content, and also it would really help for me to grow the channel and reach more people who share that dream of making a decent living as an artist, you could do me a big favor by giving this video a thumbs up, and you can also hit that subscribe button. So when we talk about the value of your art, we have to talk a little bit about the art world. What you need to understand about the art world is there's no one art world. You have to think of the art world more like a bunch of little villages, each with their own kind of audience and each with their own rules about kind of what determines success. Now, the village that I live in is the village of commercial art sales. So that is the village where an artist earns his living by selling his work, and it's either usually to individuals who are going to hang that work either in their home or potentially in their offices or place of work. That's a very different village from the village of publicly funded galleries and museums, for a couple of reasons. And if you want to learn more about that, I actually have a very in-depth video on understanding the art world, and I'll put a link to that up in the at the end cards. But the one thing you have to realize is that in the village of selling your work commercially, where you live and die by how much the public desires your work and how much they're willing to pay for it, what determines whether or not a piece of art is good is very different from what determines whether or not a piece of art is valued in the public museum and galleries, particularly where postmodernism dominates. And the main difference is over in that village of postmodernism, skill is not only not required, it is actually to be avoided at all costs. And what's the most important thing is what the artist was thinking or what their concept was. And in that village, critics determine whether or not a piece of art is a great work of art or not. Now, over in my village, it's a very, very different story. So in my village, the public, not some art critic, determines whether a piece of art is good or not. And depending on how much they think it is good, the more they love the piece, the more they value it, the more they'll be willing to pay for it. Now, a piece of art's value in this village comes down to only two things. One is desirability. That is, how much does the public actually want your work? How much do they want to take it home and hang it in their house? And the other thing is scarcity. So how much of your work or similar work is out there and available? And these two things are really important. So obviously, the more desirable your work is, the more people will be willing to pay for it. But scarcity is one of the most important things. And so that is, if there is a lot of your work or similar work out there, the public has a lot to choose from in terms of whose art are they going to buy, and there's a lot of people producing similar quality artwork, then the person who's going to sell is going to be the person who has the lowest price. And as Seth Godin says, then it just becomes a race to the bottom, and that's not a race you want to win. So what we want to do is we want to get to a place where our work is highly desirable and where it's scarce. So there's not a lot of competition for that. So there's a couple main ways that you can do that. So one of the first ways that you can raise the desirability of your work is just to improve your skill. In art, just as in music or film or fashion design or anything, the public values skill. Now, that's not what goes on in the postmodernist world, but we don't have to worry about that. They have no impact on the world of selling your art. So one of the most important things for you to do if you want to increase the value of your work is to increase your skills. Now, you also have to understand the different modes of painting if you really want to be able to do that. So there are basically 3 modes of painting. And it's very important to know which one of these you are in when you are sitting down with pencil in hand or brush in hand and you're actually creating. So the first mode of creating is practice. Now, we all recognize that from sports. Anybody that's played sports or kind of any other pastime, if you want to get really good at something and be able to perform highly, you need to practice. And the same thing applies to art. Now, what do I mean by practice? Well, it's things like having a sketchbook, for example. So for most artists that I see out there, they really could use to improve their drawing skill. Well, the best way to do that is to draw. So one way of improving your drawing skill is just to maintain a daily sketchbook and every day force yourself to draw for 20 minutes a day. If you do that, you will get better. Another way to improve your drawing skill is to take life drawing courses. There are certain established ways that you can kind of fast track that ability to draw by taking life drawing classes and doing certain exercises like contour drawings and blind contour drawings and all kinds of other things. And these are just exercises. And the main thing here is there's no thought that this is going to produce a finished piece of art that you are going to sell or that you are going to hang up or whatever. Now, in the case of life drawing, once you get to the stage of maybe long poses, you might in fact have something like that. But that's not the main intent of actually engaging in the exercise. The intent is to practice and to hone your skills. Now, the next mode that most people are aware of is product mode. And that is where you're just using the skills, the experience, the knowledge, everything that you are kind of confident and competent in, techniques, things like that, to try and create the best piece of art you can do now. And if you stick to the things that you are competent and confident in, you should produce work at a pretty consistent level, which is about at the level of kind of your best pieces. Now, the problem with product mode is there's no growth that happens in there. If you just stick with what you know how to do now, 10 years from now, you'll be producing work of the same quality. And this is where the next mode comes in, and it's very, very important, and that's called process mode. And in process mode, this is where you're trying new things. You're trying new techniques, you're trying new painting processes, you're maybe trying new mediums, you're trying new subject matter. The important part is you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. What you need to understand in process mode is there's a very high likelihood of failure. So there's a very good chance that the piece that you're working on is not going to turn out. And that makes sense, right? You're doing something that you don't know how to do. So it's not logical to expect that every time you do this, the end result is going to be good. But here's the thing about process mode. Process mode is where breakthroughs occur. And Process mode is where you acquire new skills, you acquire new experiences, you push your creativity because you're playing the what if game. And over time, what starts happening is the time spent in process mode kind of ups your skill set when you move back to product mode. And so, what you ideally want to do over the development of your career is spend time in practice mode to develop those specific skills. You want to spend time in process mode, so outside of your comfort zone, trying new things and experimenting, but realizing that there's a very good chance you could fail. Because what most artists do is every once in a while they step into process mode, the work fails, and they get insecure and they scurry back to their comfort zone, and then they just stay there the rest of their career. Well, no growth ever happens in the comfort zone. And then also over the course of your career, every once in a while, you want to dip back into product mode and try and create the best possible pieces that you can based on your current level of skills, experience, knowledge, and creativity. And by bouncing between these three modes over the course of your career, you will continue to see the quality of your work in product mode get higher and higher and higher. And as I mentioned before, the public really values skill. So as your work exhibits that skill more and more, the public is going to value your work higher. And this also affects scarcity because there are a lot of artists out there who are pretty good at the various skills and techniques and things like that, but there are much fewer that have mastered them. So as you master the skills, the knowledge, the techniques, the different mediums, your subject matter, you will have less and less competition. So your work will become more scarce, and that is going to increase the value. And then there's one other reason why you want to master all those skills. And that is if the work that you create, even if it is extremely desirable, if it is easy to copy, someone or many people will copy it. And then it just becomes a race to the bottom, as Seth Godin mentioned, where the public will buy from whoever's willing to sell it more cheaply. So simply by improving your skills, you will improve the value of your work and you will improve the scarcity of your work. Now, there's one other aspect that goes into the learning, and that's more the conceptual knowledge. That's things like composition, the way in which we arrange the values, edges, colors, shapes on our page. And if you master that as well, that has a huge impact on how the public engages with your work. So if you want to increase the value of your work, increase your skill set, increase the amount of time you spend in process mode, trying a bunch of new things, increase the amount of time you spend practicing on the skills that you are deficient in. If you want to achieve the highest level of desirability and scarcity for your work, it's when you can take all of these skills, all of these concepts, your mastery of a ton of different painting processes and ways of painting, and if you can develop your own unique voice. And that is the highest level of work, and that is the work that the public values the most. So you want to be able to create great work that reaches out, it engages the viewer, it draws them in, it makes them feel that biblical emotion of coveting, they want to possess it. It also experiences mastery in technical knowledge and conceptual knowledge, and if it exhibits the unique voice of the artist. So that is, if someone sees your work, they don't need to see the signature or the card to know who did it. They just automatically know who did it. Once you can achieve work like that, then the world will beat a path to your door. You won't have problems selling your work. You will just have trouble keeping up with the demand, and that will also cause your prices just to continually rise. And that's what happened to me, and I've seen that happen to a number of friends of mine once they hit that point where they were creating great work with a unique voice. So the question then becomes, how do you create your own unique voice? And that is going to be the subject of my next video. Now, for those of you who are very, very interested in selling your work, I've actually put together an in-depth webinar on what I believe are the 10 keys that you need to understand if you want to be successful in selling your work. And you can watch that for free by going to www.aspiringartist.ca. The webinar runs every 15 minutes. You'll just need to put in your name and your email, and you'll be able to watch that for free. So I hope you have enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Again, if you like my content and you would like to see me continuing to produce more, it would really help me out if you would press the subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And that's going to help me get my message out to more people out there who share the same dream that we do.